All right, everybody, I'd like to introduce our next presenter here at the Planet MicroCap Showcase Vancouver, Jared Smith from Ammo Inc. Jared, take it away.
Thank you. First of all, before we start, how many of you are familiar with the firearm and ammunition space in the United States today? How many of you are gun owners in the room? So very few, because having this conversation in Canada is very different than having this conversation in Texas. So we'll start with that. I'm on. Ammo Inc. is started in 2016. It bought a company out of bankruptcy called HPR, quickly got into the ammunition space and decided that we had to continue down this path of vertical integration. In 2019, we bought a company called Jagemann Stamping Group. Jagemann was out of the automotive industry and was a lead manufacturer in the industry of premium brass casings. And I'm going to digress from this presentation for just a second. When we talk about ammunition, there are four major components to an ammunition round. There is the projectile or the bullet. There's the brass casing that holds the gunpowder. And then there is the primer. And the primer is the actual initiation where the firing pin strikes the primer, it ignites, it explodes into the gunpowder stack, pushing the projectile out of the barrel. And whether we're talking about centerfire pistol ammunition, centerfire rifle ammunition, or shot shell ammunition, there are those four major components. There's a projectile, there's gunpowder, there's a casing, and there's a primer. And the company that was bought in 2019 was a premium brass case manufacturer. And they produced brass cases from 25 auto, which is a very, very small pistol case, all the way up to 50 BMG, including all the Russian caliber equivalents, 12.7 by 108. So when Ammo Inc. bought Jagemann, it instantly launched the ammunition company into being a major player in this space. Over the last, let's call it 10 years, if you're familiar with this space, there is a ton of volatility in the firearm and ammunition space around election cycles and around international events, Ukrainian war. When Trump got elected, the market collapsed roughly 20 to 30% because our sales creep up when Democratic presidents come to office. And when Republican presidents come to office, the market shrinks back down because there's not such a fear of gun control. So I'm going to kind of walk through some of these things. But 2019, we bought Jagemann Stamping Group. And in 2021, at the height of COVID, we bought a company called GunBroker. Now, I'm going to back up to here. GunBroker is a marketplace for the exchange of firearms among private and professional buyers and sellers. It is the 900-pound gorilla in the U.S. market. We do over $1 billion in transactions every year on the platform. We are larger than Bass Pro Shop and Sportsman's Warehouse combined in terms of the total volume of firearms that are transferred on the site. Today, the way to buy a firearm is a buyer and a seller meet online, and they meet and they agree on a price. And we negotiate the transfer of that firearm from the seller to the buyer. And we make sure that that firearm is transferred through the national, what's called the NICS system. And it's where we do background checks. Today in the United States, firearms can be sold from private seller to private buyer, not requiring it go through the NICS background check. You guys can meet in the state of Texas, decide to sell a gun, you can do it in a parking lot. If you sell a firearm on GunBroker, we force the shipment of that firearm to a federal firearms licensed dealer where we do that background check. And I'll get to more of this in just a minute. We are the largest player in this space. We are 4 times the size of anybody even close to our competition. And as we look at market potential for GunBroker, that transfer between the buyer and the seller and that shipment of the firearm, GunBroker never takes ownership of the firearm. And we don't handle the transfer of the payment or the funds related to that firearm. So we are a completely hands-off platform. Of that $1 billion that we do on the platform, during COVID, we did 1.7 billion. We take a 6% final value fee off all the transactions done on the platform. So when you do $1 billion, you bring in roughly 60 million in revenue. Of that 60 million in revenue, 80% of it is profit. We are a very profitable company. We don't have a need for cash. Our balance sheet is pristine. We have roughly, we have a 10 million note on the 185,000 square foot manufacturing facility that we just moved into last August. Let me move on here. So, what's unique about GunBroker? GunBroker in size and scale transfers one firearm at a time, one item at a time. So if you went on to GunBroker and wanted to buy a firearm and add a scope to it, you can't do it today. If you wanted to buy a hat on gunbroker.com and you wanted to buy another hat in the same transaction, we are not able to facilitate carding of more than one item, which is the reason why GunBroker was acquired in 2021, is that it is the largest in this space. We own roughly 10% of the entire firearms trade inside the United States, and it's done one gun at a time. And it's done without a payment processing system. So our acquisition in 2021, we quickly decided we're going to bring on centralized payment processing, and we are adding a cart. So we are going from eBay to Amazon this fall. And that is, and I'll back up one slide, is where we're starting here. The abilities to take our take rate on GunBroker from that 5 to 6% where we're capped, because there's very little margin in firearm transactions today. It allows us to adjust our tiered rate as you start matching that firearm up with the optics, the scope, the ammunition, all the accessories that go with that firearm transaction. And we are, at that point in time, can adjust our take rate on the actual items that are being sold on the site. So you go in and you buy your first Glock, whatever that firearm is, and at that point in time, we take a 5 to 6% rate on the firearm. We can take up to 10% on the ammunition and all the accessories that are sold with that site. It is a game-changing moment for this company as we move into 2024. So credit card processing through this fall, carding in the spring. Come on. This is speaking to the size of GunBroker today. We have over 6 million items listed on the site at any given time. We have 7.6 million registered users that are accessing the site on a daily basis. We've done over 10 billion in cumulative purchases, and we've done over 1 billion transfers on the site since 1999. We're in the top 3 to 500 websites in the entire United States in terms of the volume and the attractiveness of this platform within our community. And we've done it one firearm at a time. Come on. Am I pointing this at the right spot? All right, maybe that's better. So what are the revenue opportunities that change for the GunBroker platform in 2024? Is that by adjusting our tiered fee rate, by adjusting the tiered fee rate, we are offering shipping solutions so that we have brokered relationships with UPS and FedEx. Instead of our buyers and sellers having to go out and buy individual rates for shipping those firearms, we're packaging that product through the platform. We're also, in 2024, enabling the financing of the cart. So as you build out that firearm, you want the ammunition, you want the optic. Oftentimes, the accessories are twice the cost of the firearm. And to be able to scale up that purchase, oftentimes our users don't have the liquidity or the cash available, so we'll be offering financing. We believe we can take our take rate anywhere from today, 5.7%, to the high single digits, low double digits, effectively doubling our sources of revenue and our marginality over the next 6 months. So this is the basis of GunBroker today. Single gun, one seller, one buyer through an FFL exchange. And the question that we get asked most is, what happens when regulations change inside the United States? What happens when a state bans the sale of specific firearms at the county level or the state level? That's truly where GunBroker becomes the unifier of this industry, because we are the only source out there that has the ability to meet state and federal regulations through a flip of a switch. Today, the state of Texas or Illinois or Oregon or New York bans some trigger switch or some type of stock. We turn those sites off, and all firearms through the GunBroker platform go through the NICS background check. Regulation only brings more opportunity to GunBroker. Regulation only drives more business to the GunBroker platform. Regulation is imminent in this industry. So I'm going to transition from GunBroker. Is there any question specific to GunBroker before I move back to the ammunition side of the business? Yes, sir. We are not. We have decided not to sell ammunition on our website because we want to remain completely agnostic for the entire firearm industry, for the entire ammunition industrial base to be able to use GunBroker and not see it as a competitor. It was part of the original reason why GunBroker was bought, was to be able to do a direct-to-consumer model within the United States, leveraging GunBroker, and we've since moved away from that path. So we talked earlier about, yes, sir. On
the shipping revenue that you were talking about, do you have signed contracts with like UPS or FedEx? And also, what is your margin on it?
So we're in the process of building that out because we've not had a cart and because we've not controlled the transaction to date. We've leveraged the transaction. We've negotiated the payment, but because we don't have that centralized payment processing system on the platform today, we do not have those contracts. We are working on those contracts right now. It is part of our relaunch this fall. In terms of margins, we've got some, I call it preliminary rates from UPS and from FedEx, but I don't have a margin profile on that as today. So you have GunBroker, and it's the e-marketplace. And then on the other side, we have the ammunition division. The ammunition division, we moved into the new factory in August of 2022. Our capabilities to date, we could produce somewhere between 200 to 300 million brass cases out of that industry or out of that plant. And since the inception of JAGM and once COVID took off, we leveraged all that brass to sell our own branded ammunition. And that was great during times of COVID when we could push those sales and price was not a factor. In 2022, as COVID recessed, the sheer demand for ammunition subsided, and there was a great deal of margin compression across the entire United States. And so we've moved our factory back from processing and trying to manufacture everything in its own case, and we've gone and moved into the OEM brass market space. And so now we are supplying the likes of Federal and Hornady and Winchester and Sierra Barnes and every major ammunition manufacturer around the world that we are allowed to sell to. And we are starting to build back the margins that we lost in 2022. When I talk about margin profile, ammunition historically has seen anywhere between a 10 to 15% margin profile for pistol, anywhere between a 10 to, I'd call it mid-20s margin profile for rifle ammunition, whereas we can sell the brass casings for 25 to 60% because we are not having to provide the entire vertical integration stack. We're not having to go out and buy primers. We're not having to go out and buy gunpowder, and we're not having to source the projectiles. It's reduced our cash needs within our, it's reduced our cash needs, lowering our net working capital. And we've increased our margin profile by not only leveraging those brass cells, but our margin profile for specific like 7mm PRC, 7.62 by 51, 50 BMG. Our margins exceed anywhere between 35 to 60%. This is the new facility. It's in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. It is the most premium ammunition manufacturing facility in the United States today. It has a 200 meter indoor range, and we are completely certified for mil-spec standards as well as NATO standards. We're in the process of rebranding the entire ammunition line, giving us better visibility. These are the accounts that we're in. And with the increase in demand from Ukraine, our products, I'm not getting the rest of the map here. Let me back up. Our products and the demand for brass casings exceed our ability to supply for the next 12 months. There's not a lack of demand out there as we move into international markets, a place that we have not played in the last, well, since the inception. I'm not getting this to work. Well, let's stop there. Let me ask, is there any questions for anybody in the room?
So I get you got critical mass of revenue, you bought gunbroker.com. I'd like to get my head around any part of that revenue could classify as recurring revenue.
Say that again.
Recurring income, like recurring revenue.
For Gunbroker?
Gunbroker, yeah. Is it just pure retail transactional sales based on critical mass of the market in America?
Yeah. So our recurring revenue, I don't know if I explained this clearly, but of the $1 billion to $1.7 billion that we've done in the past 3 years, we pull roughly 6% of that revenue in, which is anywhere between $50 to $60 million annually. Does that answer your question? Yeah, it's always there. That's correct. And because it is a truly software development play, our costs are extremely low. And that's because we have a dominant position. That's exactly right. So roughly 15% of the production today is contractual. We're growing that. We just moved into this new plant, and because we've consolidated operations from our pace and loading facility and the automotive division, we're in the early stages of kind of building out that sales cycle. But go ahead.
So let's say China over Ukraine.
Yeah, so we are restricted by what's called ITAR in the Department of Commerce. So NATO partners, other international partners, all of our sales go through a vetting process. That's correct. That's correct. Yes, sir. Because we never take ownership of the firearm itself, there's very little liability that we see in terms of the regulation of the exchange of the firearm. Where we see liability is because payment processing is new to us. It's really the managing chargebacks. It's testing out and make sure that we have the customer service to support the oncoming volume that we will do through the website, going from one item at a time to carding and shipping those products to multiple destinations, because the firearm has to ship to a federal firearms license dealer and the rest of the cart can ship to the actual seller's home. It creates tax issues, but that's what 2 years of development is there to solve. So we don't see anything from the regulation side. I think long and short is the answer. It's U.S. only. That's correct. Ammo is international. Okay. Yeah, I'm finished. If there's any other questions? Yes.
And you bought back 750,000 shares in your last quarter. Are you planning to buy back additional shares?
We will continue our buyback as we see shares kind of fall into how we're allocating capital today. So the answer is yes. We will continue to buy back shares. We're sitting on, well, over $40 million in cash. I think 47.5 million as our last reporting. It is a great opportunity for our resources because we just don't have a need for cash today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So there are a number of acquisitions that we're looking at on the gun broker side. We've just finished a massive CapEx project on the ammo side, new plant. We still have a ton of capacity to turn on. If the acquisitions that we would look at within the gun broker side is really diving down into the stack, owning payment processing, buying a payment processor, looking at other opportunities once we finish out this software development and saying, hey, we have an auction house, we have buy it now capabilities, we have credit card processing, we have a financing solution, and it's really skinning that cat and going after other industries, whether it's fishing or off-road or any other highly regulated space that meets our unique software solutions. Say that again. Yeah, the real growth profile. We've been so focused on the execution of the software side of the house. And because credit card processing and carding is such a huge revolutionary step for this space. But yes, the growth model is credit card process, carding, change the tiered fee rate, financing, look at other industries. Other industries that are not serviced by Amazon and eBay that keep us and the community and kind of tapping into the large community that we already have and their similar interests. Okay, thank you.